Thank you. It's a good question, and it's a complicated answer. I guess I will start by saying I think the sort of narrative around right now, like we push too many kids to college, and so now what we need to do is create alternatives that don't require college. Um, well, there is some truth to that. I also think it's really important to underscore that college still carries a significant wage premium. And so when we say to kids or families, your kid doesn't need college, that's not really true, right? I mean, but we know that in the future, the vast majority of jobs in this economy are going to require some sort of post-secondary education. So this myth that we can create all these alternatives that bypass post-secondary education that lead to really good jobs that pay family sustaining wages, it is a myth, right? I do work on apprenticeship. A lot of people position apprenticeship as an alternative to college. It may be an alternative to a 4-year degree as the first thing that you do after high school, but we really emphasize the importance of having those apprenticeship pathways connected to post-secondary training, connected to college-bearing coursework, so that young people have options expanded through these programs rather than narrowed. Mike, you mentioned, yes, there's this sort of disinvestment in career and technical education and vocational education over the last several decades. That's absolutely true. Some of that is a response to the fact that the sort of vocational education systems of yesteryear led to a lot of race-based tracking, and it was built to funnel young people into dead ends. Certain young people into dead ends, everyone else got to go to college. The truth is that there have been a lot of really important reforms to career and technical education, and research shows that there are now quite a few benefits when young people pursue career and technical education programs that are embedded within rigorous academic coursework, right? Not, again, the idea is to not fork young people off early and do that sorting hat, if you will, in eighth or ninth grade and send some kids to jobs and some kids to college, but to really find ways for them to have both of those experiences and to be building career technical skills while also developing foundational and vitally important literacy and numeracy skills, all of the things that you would in high school. But when you look at the data, our government, our federal government right now is very supportive of the idea of CTE, supportive of the idea of vocational education. But the truth is that in inflation adjusted terms, we invest about $2 billion less in career and technical education today than we did in 1980. And so, while it's something that we're all singing about and talking about, the federal government has not put its money where its mouth is in quite some time. And that's not the whole story, though. Mike, you asked a question about the labor market itself, right? So education, yes, we've pushed a lot of kids into college. We've cut funding for pathways that could supplement that sort of more traditional academic route. We have said to people that the only way to a good middle class job is to go to college, which doesn't have to be true, but it really is the best way to find one right now. And we've really underinvested in routes to help young people sort of have a supported transition out of high school into anything other than that 4-year degree. So there's this idea that you graduate from high school and you're sort of on your own to figure it out, navigate the labor market, navigate this sort of immensely complex credential landscape. And it's not working for a lot of young people, right? The other thing is that the labor market itself has gotten a lot more complicated to navigate. For young people, at the beginning of this call, we named a number of the industries where young people are represented and typically take sort of those first jobs. Many of those jobs, those sort of true entry-level jobs, have disappeared. The labor market participation rate of young people is way down, and that just means for anyone on the call who doesn't spend a lot of time in labor data, that like young people aren't working as much. Many of them are going to school for longer, or when they're looking for jobs, they're really struggling to find them. And that's, again, because the sort of nature of the part of the labor market where young people sort of get that toehold and start working has atrophied over the last several decades. Young people are overrepresented in the gig economy and these sort of transitional roles. Those places, they offer a lot of flexibility and they may feel very attractive and entrepreneurial for young people, but they tend not to be good jobs. They don't offer benefits. They're not really structured to support young people's growth over time. A couple of things that I would just name in addition to that. One is just this idea of credential inflation. We know from research that a lot of jobs that historically required just a high school diploma now list bachelor's degrees as a requirement, and many of them also require 2 and 3 years of experience. That's an awfully hard thing to get, particularly if the way to get it is through unpaid internships. That disadvantages a lot of our young people who cannot work for free, and nor should they, right? So this idea that it's harder to access an entry-level job is affecting young people. And I would say that the sort of exacerbating that is this idea that you need more credentials, deeper networks, more people to help you launch your career. And we've made it more and more difficult for young people to develop those and find those people in their worlds as high schools, I think, and the education pursuit has become tighter and tighter and tighter around them. I often say that we have built high schools to wall young people off from the world they're ostensibly being prepared to enter. And then we're surprised when they get out there and they struggle. But they've never really had a chance to try on hats and be possible, meet their possible selves out there in the real world. And so when we think about ways to address this, obviously there are challenges with labor market entry that need to be attended to. There are challenges at the high school and post-secondary level that need to be attended to. But we also, I think, need to stop thinking about high school students and young people as these sort of like it's only our responsibility until the second that they graduate, and then they're out there to fend for themselves. And a lot of our systems are set up to do that for young people, and increasingly for reasons that John has named and Jessica has named, we know that's just not working for more and more and more young people. And so we really need to rethink the structures that exist around that school to work transition.